We are now at Domain 4, which is focused on vocabulary, academic knowledge, and background knowledge. First of all, we need to look at what vocabulary means, and there are multiple types of vocabulary. So you have the vocabulary that is what you hear, and so what you understand when you hear it. There's the speaking, so that's the words that you use. There's the writing, and that's the written text that you write to explain something using the level of words that you understand. And then there's the actual reading, and so that could be the sight word, so how quickly you're able to decode and pronounce words correctly. And then there's the meaning, which is understanding when you read silently. And then of course the academic language, and that's the language that's used in your classroom, so any textbooks or tests. Just as far as going a little deeper into academic language and background knowledge, for academic language, those are the complex sentence structures. So we use technical vocabulary when we're doing this, and we also use non-technical vocabulary. The technical vocabulary is, for example, the Greek and Latin roots in science class or English class, so biology, morphology, possibly in your history class or social sciences classes around collaboration. And then there's history terms, for example, monarchy and tyranny you might not see in other courses, but you know, being familiar with those in your history class will help you with accessing the concepts that they're putting forth. The non-technical language is used across disciplines. So this is words that you might see in both a science class and a history class. So I put down here as examples theory, hypothesis, and analysis. The background knowledge is the knowledge of a specific topic. So this is something to kind of anchor your understanding of the topic that you're introducing to your students. With their experience so far. So this might be something that they've read before, maybe an activity they've done before. This could be some pop culture movie. It could be something about their neighborhood, but somewhere they have some sort of foundation for connecting the new knowledge with something that they've already been exposed to. I like this idea. It says, develop a child's vocabulary knowledge, academic language, and background knowledge, and increase all aspects of reading. So what do I mean by that? If a student has the vocabulary easily accessible within their understanding of things, then they can actually read with more fluency. And remember, fluency is rate, accuracy, and prosody. This can really help students so that they're not using so much cognitive, they're not going into cognitive overload because they're trying to not only decode the words and figure out what they mean, but they're actually able to just kind of piece these different words together in sentences. The vocabulary and reading comprehension connection really comes from a child's level of vocabulary as a key indicator and predictor of whether the child understands what they're reading. So this can really, you can see this affecting readers when you have them decode an entire paragraph and then you ask them about that paragraph and they actually aren't able to tell you what it means, which you see especially in special ed with students with reading issues. So, you know, helping build a vocabulary will actually help them understand the text as well. The academic language, you know, another reason that children don't understand what they've read is a lack of proficiency in academic language. So anything that we can do to help support them in understanding some of the terms and also some of even the transition words that we use when we are, you know, understanding how to read a history book. So how to really take a look at a timeline, how to connect different eras together. In science, there's a lot, and math actually, there's a lot of vocabulary that if you learn the morphology or the etymology of words, then you can actually figure out what that word means. And so really having that academic language easily accessible when reading can help you out a lot. And then finally, a third cause of poor comprehension is often a lack of background knowledge. And this, of course, makes sense in the fact that if students haven't ever heard of a topic, then it's going to be really hard for them to connect with that topic. But you know, there is some evidence that shows that in order to comprehend a text, a reader has to adequately develop meaningful vocabulary, the meaning of the vocabulary words, the academic language knowledge, and then, of course, the background knowledge. And so we as teachers, it's really important that we allow time to really help our students develop those pieces. So what can we do as educators? We can really focus on vocabulary and word recognition. So understanding the meaning of a word helps you recognize it in print, which also adds to your reading fluency. We can look at vocabulary and reading comprehension. So knowing the meaning of words is essential to good comprehension. And then also supporting our students in academic language development. Because if they are able to quickly and with automaticity recognize a different academic language vocabulary, then they are able to move through the specific subject matter with more fluency and also higher comprehension. And finally, building background knowledge is important. If our students don't have the background knowledge, then it's our job to make sure that we are able to support them in that development. Now, there's a few important things that we can actually understand about vocabulary development and how it affects our students. So one is there is evidence of early vocabulary development having an effect on our students. So there's an idea called the Matthew effect that states over a period of time, the gap between high achieving and low achieving readers widens. So if a child doesn't understand the meaning of thousands of words by second grade, then they're going to find reading more frustrating. I link this also with the school to prison pipeline that you may have heard about. And that basically demonstrates that a student who can't read on grade level by third grade is 4 times less likely to graduate by 19 than a child who does read proficiently at that time. And also 13 times more likely to graduate um, on time than his or her proficient peers. So I'm sorry, that was for students who are growing up in poverty are 13 times less likely to graduate on time than their wealthier peers. You know, this is also related to about 1 in every 10 young male high school dropouts is in jail or juvenile detention, compared to 1 in 35 young male high school graduates. So you can see that there's a huge effect when we aren't supporting our students in their early vocabulary development. So then there's also the vocabulary and concept development. And there, it's really looking at the reciprocal relationship between learning the meaning of words and acquiring broader concepts. So the more words you know, the more concepts you learn, and the more concepts you learn, the more words you know. So you can see how this is really reciprocal. So you know, really exposing our students to as much vocabulary as possible really does help them in learning the concepts as well. Next is that vocabulary is an incremental process. You know, children don't learn the meaning of most words all at once. Rather, there's levels of word meaning knowledge. So each person will learn some words that are unknown, others that they are acquainted with or familiar with, and other vocabulary that is well established. So our job is to start building that. So give them opportunities to learn words through multiple exposures over time. You know, and this is through hearing, through speaking, through reading, and through writing. The next one is focused on vocabulary instruction, target words, and larger sets of words. So one other issue is that the goal of vocabulary instruction is not limited to the small groups of words that are focused on direct instruction or the target or key vocabulary words. So a group of students reading a story about a garage sale, they might learn words like advertising, collectible, bargain, or junk, And then the teacher has to plan activities that promote the knowledge of a larger set of words. So we see this, see that they may need to learn words that include independent word learning strategies, so maybe word consciousness or wide reading. So providing opportunities for them to go deeper with how they use these words with other words is important. And then finally, that text is more complex than speech. So you have fiction and informational books that we read, and they use a larger and more sophisticated vocabulary and more complex language structures than speech. So this is a challenge for students. So in addition, it's the complexity of the written language that requires teachers to teach all three: the vocabulary, the academic language, and the background knowledge. So it's not just, can you identify this one word by itself, but how does this word relate to other words to build sentences, to build concepts? So with all of this information that we need to teach our students, what factors should we consider when choosing words for our instruction? So one is the frequency. I know you have all heard about the high frequency sight words, and those are actually a really good starting point because those are words that students will see again and again. Utility is also an important factor to consider. So how useful are these words in writing and speaking? Are they necessary for performing other school tasks? So for example, non-technical words. I always use the example of transition words. These are non-technical words, but it definitely defines a strong writer and a weaker writer, whether they're using, for example, therefore, in conclusion, all of these kind of take the ability to really put together the concept that you're trying to write about and think about in a more transparent way. And then the next one is the level of knowledge. The less students know about the word, and especially a word that's in an unknown category, the more it becomes, the more important it becomes to teach. So is it critical to the meaning of the text? Is it not defined in the context of the text? Is there figurative speech or idiomatic expressions? And do the students have a limited background knowledge of the word? I remember teaching some students in Oakland, and we were reading about skiing, and I asked if any of them had been skiing, and of course they hadn't. So the relating that story to what their experience was even more difficult. And so there was a bit more teaching that I needed to do at that moment. So with some of the stuff that we look at in the research is the tiers of words. So you have basically there's three tiers that go through this. The tier one is the early elementary words, the basic vocabulary. I'm happy, sad, glad, talk, cold. So they're obviously important, especially for English language learners, to really be able to grasp those, to identify what's going on in the different readings or situations within the class. Tier two words have a higher utility. So things like avoid, fortunate, industrious. So academic language plays a large role in verbal, oral and written and writing, functioning across the variety of domains. So, I like to think of this as just more intense support that you're going to need to support your students, because these words are a little bit more difficult, and they might also appear in several texts across different areas of study. The tier three words are, there's a low frequency of coming across these, and usually they're more focused on whatever the domain or the content specific topic that you're going over. So I use the example here of isotope. And that you might have to spend a little bit more time actually teaching these specific words when you're working with your students, so that they can then understand how those words work within the course that you're teaching. So here's some more non-technical academic language words that I highly recommend you teach to your students. So define, identify, analyze, illustrate, speculate, summarize, classify. And just getting them familiar with these words so they can, really attend to the assignments and expectations that you have for them. So here are some practical things that you can do to help your students read. So one is exposing them to a lot of different types of reading. So have them, that will expose them to multiple types of vocabulary. So provide them with a variety of leveled books, and also help them start identifying words that they don't recognize in books. It says the rarity and variety of words in children's books is greater than that in adult conversation. So just exposing them to more is actually really the best thing to do. And then also make sure that they are at the right level of difficulty. You don't want to frustrate your students, because then they'll start reading less. And then also give it to them in sufficient amounts. So there's been some research that looked at the sustained silent reading groups, and oftentimes those are done, they're either too long or too short, or there's too many distractions for them to really be effective. So really coming up with ways that you can support their reading in the level and manner that really supports their learning. And then also give them motivation to pursue their understanding. So not to just skip over words that they don't understand. You know, exposing them to different types of text and different examples of the different words used in context, whether it's spoken or written. And then, of course, explicit direct instruction. So help them construct definitions and show them how to use dictionaries, which now we mostly have on our phones. Help them so that they're able to analyze word structure, and that they're also interested in exploring word relationships. I know this is me, but I absolutely enjoyed learning about etymologies when I was younger, and so, you know, allowing your students to get opportunities to learn about where these words came from, and so that they're willing to do this exploration on their own as well. Effective vocabulary instruction includes these 5 things. So direct teaching of words, development of word consciousness, teaching and modeling independent strategies, providing high quality oral and written language, and of course encourage wide reading. And if we can do all of these things for our students, then we can increase their vocabulary. So what is direct vocabulary instruction? It is when you pronounce the word and give a student-friendly definition, or maybe you have the students say the word, maybe you have them use the word in a sentence, have the students engage in a think, pair, share using the word in sentences to that they create. Excuse me, let me just add this Y here. It looks like it disappeared. And then also have students act out the word or draw a visual representation using examples and non-examples, guiding them in a discussion of the concepts and academic content, creating a graphic organizer for concept development, and also doing extension activities that include using the word in speaking and academic writing. So it's really just providing opportunities for your students to really engage with the vocabulary. Some direct teaching strategies would be things such as a semantic map, so word maps or semantic webs. So teaching the meaning of words and building on key concepts. So here we go, we've got sense, and here's some descriptive words. We've got the 5 senses here. And then down here we've got notes, so making music, people talking, or I'm sorry, noises, and a cow meowing, or a cat meowing. And so really having them think about how do these words fit together, and what are examples of them. Another way to teach direct teaching strategies is the Feres Model. So you have the target word here, example words there, antonyms and synonyms, so they can, you know, also see how that word, the meaning really is relating. A semantic feature analysis. So here you have the terms, and then you have them categorize. You know, so is a dog a or an animal? Which of these are mammals? Which of these have fur? And then they can start, you know, being able to break down some of the complex meanings. Venn diagrams also work, so that helps them learn the difference and the similarities and differences between the different words. So here's the summary of part one of the vocabulary domain. So one is you always need to define the role of vocabulary, academic language, and background knowledge in reading development. So knowledge of the technical academic language, the difficult words related to the specific topic. It becomes more important as children enter the upper level elementary grades and middle school, all the way through high school, of course. And then also discuss issues related to the development of vocabulary, academic language, and background knowledge. So learning the meaning of words in an incremental process. Rarely do children completely understand the meaning of a word all at once. So returning back to the vocabulary. And then finally, explain the factors to consider in developing students' vocabulary, academic language, and background knowledge. So when deciding which word meanings to teach directly to students, teachers should select words on the basis of the three criteria: the frequency, the utility, and the level of knowledge. So next, part two, we're going to be looking more at the instruction and assessment around teaching vocabulary.